Welcome to the channel, guys, and today we're going to be talking about Ethan Winters returning as a character in Resident Evil 8. Now, in Resident Evil 7, of course, Ethan Winters was the protagonist. Our goal was to save our crazy-ass wife that was a child trafficker and essentially get her out of there, which we apparently did, succeeded in, and continued on the Winters legacy. However, the strange part about this is how it leads into Resident Evil 8, and we're going to be talking about a few things here. So some of the things we're going to talk about are: how exactly did Ethan forgive Mia for her actions? How did the government allow Ethan and Mia to continue to live on? And was Ethan a good choice for a protagonist or a playable character in Resident Evil 8? So let's get into these topics one by one. And the first one we're going to discuss is obviously, how in the hell did Ethan and Mia make up after Resident Evil 7? Now, I've talked about this extensively in Resident Evil 7 post-discussion videos about how even after saving her, they're going to have to do a lot of marriage counseling. So let's go through some of the things that occurred between them and some of the revelations that have come to be known about Ethan and Mia's relationship. First off, if anyone remembers, Ethan and Mia got into quite a little bit of a knife fight, which ended in Ethan putting axe into Mia. After this, Mia puts a screwdriver into Ethan's hand and quite literally chainsaws the fuck out of him and cuts his arm off. This proceeds into Ethan shooting Mia, and yeah, this progresses on in Resident Evil 7 in various other ways as well, which means they had quite a lot of violence. But then we also learn that Mia has been lying to Ethan the entire time through their relationship. So she's been pretending to put on a fake job and doing fake things, while the reality is she's child trafficking and she's okay with bioorganic weapon manufacturers and other things. So at this point, Ethan's basically forgiven somebody that's been using children and modifying them and helping organizations out that use these children to destroy entire cities and towns and stuff. Great marriage material. I'm not particularly sure how they've made up after Resident Evil 7, but based on the Resident Evil 8 trailer, it does look like Ethan and Mia have quite a love for each other, and he was very concerned that Chris had shot her. Now we'll go on to the next one. How particularly did Mia get away with all of this illegal activity? Now, the only possible scenario and solution I can give this, considering she was absolutely in Blue Umbrella custody, is that Blue Umbrella basically allowed Mia and Ethan to live in this remote island village unknown to the BSAA or government organizations and provided safe haven. Essentially, the only reason I think they do this is to use her blood and Ethan's for test subject reasons, and also if they did conceive a baby, of course that would have very interesting results. But the second is that Mia basically gave as much information as possible in a plea deal to the government, and this allowed them to gain lots of knowledge about the connections, other organizations, bioorganic weapon production, manufacturing, and all that good stuff. I mean, it would be a little bit realistic, as this stuff does actually happen in real life, especially when you have an individual with such sensitive and tactful information. Now, talking about whether Ethan was a good choice for a playable character or even a character in a Resident Evil game at all, this is something that I've thought about in great depth. Of course, in Resident Evil 7, he was quite a boring character. He didn't have many reactions and he felt very unrealistic. I don't think anyone would ever argue that they liked Ethan as a character, or if they did, it would be very hard to justify because there's not really anything notable or memorable about his actions, words, or anything else. Again, he was very bland. You didn't even get to see him in 99% of the game. There was a tiny part with a hallucination that lasted a whole 5 seconds, I believe. And yeah, other than that, there's just nothing notable about Ethan. Nobody even knows his real backstory, his history, or anything like that. So you can't really make an argument otherwise. The only interesting thing I would say is he's obviously infected in Resident Evil 7 due to the hallucinations and the regeneration ability. Now, this could be a plot device used for the future of Resident Evil, and that's the only reason I think he could be an interesting returning character. This would also mean, as I said earlier, if he did have a child with Mia, which it looks like is possibly the case in Resident Evil 8, that would have quite interesting results, considering she is infected too. I don't particularly think that Ethan should have been a main character in Resident Evil 8, or even a character overall other than a plot device used to extend the narrative itself. However, I can agree with one decision. If Capcom does have somebody write Ethan's plot very well, we could finally have his character fleshed out, and this could possibly set up a future contender, as we do need some replacements for characters such as Chris due to the aging effect starting to get to them. Obviously, if the franchise is to continue, we're going to need a new younger cast, and with a fleshed out Ethan, we could go down this route. It's just still very strange that Capcom decided to choose Ethan, because there are so many characters in Resident Evil that I'm sure many individuals would agree would make a much better choice, or just an original character overall. But we'll just have to wait to see how Capcom writes this in. I do hope, however, he's much more emotional and talks this time, as again in Resident Evil 7 there really wasn't much communication. If we get to see a lot more of Ethan's history, how things have progressed and things, that would be a nice little touch and add a hell of a lot more character depth to what currently feels like an empty shell. Anyway, what do you guys think about Ethan Winters returning to Resident Evil 8? Do you think this was a good choice by Capcom? Do you think it was a bad choice? Do you think it was odd? Do you agree with any of the points I made? Do you disagree with any of them? Please do let me know in the comments below. Also, if you did like or dislike the video, please leave a like or a dislike and give some feedback if you did dislike it and let me know why. I just hope you're all having a beautiful day as always. I'm looking forward to seeing where Resident Evil 8 goes, to be honest, in a weird way, even though I've had some issues with Capcom lately. I hope you all have a beautiful day as always anyway. Take it easy and peace.